Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as 50 hours, but hey, it's something. Now, hopefully, by the time this episode comes out, you'll see the thing that I have that has like the premiere ready for the next video for Thursday. I hope you enjoy that video, because after that video comes out, there's going to be a pause in main series videos. There will be no main series video coming out in the month of July. The reason being is that it is the final amount of time to literally buckle down and finish the project that I've been working on to the best of my ability. I literally keep getting just too distracted by literally everything else to do it. And I will say one thing, the project will be released no matter how finished it is. Quite literally, if literally there are multiple points in the video where there's just blank space, by all means, sure, that'll be it. As long as the video will be out on August 1st. As much as I really don't want to do have it so that there's a bunch of blank space in the video, I will release it in that capacity if I have to. Because quite literally, I don't want to keep working on it for the rest of the year. I don't want to do that. When August 1st comes out, it will be released in whatever capacity it is in. I'm literally this close to just canceling it altogether and just moving on to do other projects, because it's just genuinely infuriating to me at this point. And I'm at what point, I don't want to get too real, but it's just it genuinely just feels like you guys don't give a fuck about me. Because it's just if you were here last year, literally the whole thing I did last year was quite literally just a project of me literally just explaining fully just that viewpoint. It's just I really do feel like it's just there's no point in any of this. It will quite literally stink if I have to release it in its shitty version, but it's just I just can't anymore. I quite genuinely just can't. I keep getting distracted. I keep pushing things down the peg. It's just probably shouldn't just ramble about this, and let's just move on to the news stories, whatever. PRD is officially dissolved because they finally did the full tabulation of the results, and it just really does not look like it's just yeah, but all the results tabulated, the PRD does not meet the threshold to remain a national political party. And as such, as of now, the Party of the Democratic Revolution has officially dissolved, again, on the national level. Because in Mexican, politics, they can, parties that lose their national status do get revoked into being, state parties. It happened with the New Alliance Party, it happened with the Social Encounter Party. They will still exist on, a local level, but... And there is a chance that they could still try to reboot the party to be a national party again. It's very possible that the next election they will try to maintain. But at this point, I think it's effectively gone. Especially when this is going to be a bit of a problem, because the PRD has elected a couple of people in the upcoming legislature. And what's going to happen is that those guys are just going to choose to join one of the parties of their coalition. That's what happened with the PES when AMLO and they all managed to go through. But my best guess is that will probably be a Michoacan state party by the end of its lifetime. Anyway, speaking of Latin American politics and lifetime, let's find out something that has been going on in Chiquita. A Florida jury on Monday found that banana company Chiquita Brands International is liable for financing the Colombian paramilitary group Autodefensas Unidas de Colombia. The jury in the civil case in federal court in the Southern District of Florida found that Chiquita knowingly provided substantial assistance to the AUC to a degree sufficient to create a foreseeable risk of harm to others. Chiquita, one of the world's largest banana producers, has been ordered to pay a total of $38.3 million to the families of 8 victims of the AUC, which was a far-right military group that was designated as a terrorist organization by the United States. The group disbanded in 2006, according to a Stanford University's Mapping Militants project. Basically, Chiquita is facing the repercussions of actions that they have taken, because everybody kind of knows that Chiquita, faces all these issues. That's where the term Banana Republic comes from, because banana companies literally would, basically finance far-right militant groups to overthrow the elected governments of the areas to basically give all the land and resources to America. Hopefully, things will manage to go better. I think they should face way more repercussions, but, any repercussions seems to be fine. Speaking of repercussions, there's a certain individual that might be facing some repercussions due to a decision that he decided to do. If you don't know, the United Kingdom is currently holding elections. And in those elections, people run. We'll talk a little bit about them next month, but as we all know, a lot of people will end up filing. We know that there are people of certain parties that will file, but there are some people who file as independents. One individual who is running in this upcoming election is a YouTuber by the name of NO NOMINEE. Now, this guy actually has run for elections prior. He ran in the 2021 London mayoral race. And the reason why he ran in that one was he actually has a whole video on it if you look up on his channel. He has a video, and basically there was like a racist candidate, and he basically was like, we're going to beat the racist candidate. Because a lot of his videos deal with subjects of race and stuff. And basically to serve as a troll, because if you know anything about English politics, you understand how this works. In the UK, every single candidate is announced on the stage. So they'll be like, Stephen Stevens, Labour, 7 votes. Eric Erickson, Tory, 375 votes. They'll literally go through all the candidates. And typically what happens is that there's at least 1 or 2 people that like to do a little funny ha-has. Usually the candidacies of the Stark Craving Loony Party, and a more recent example would be Lord Buckethead and his counterpart Count Binface. There's also this one guy who keeps running in elections who literally just decides to wear an Elmo costume when he goes there. He literally they would run in the same districts as top people. Yeah, well, Nico has apparently decided to do something interesting because his name has popped up in 11 different constituencies, which is very odd for a number of reasons. And one of the biggest ones is the fact that they're all listed in different addresses, and they all have different individuals, who sign their ballot petitions. And according to UK law, you can't do that. Legally, they can't do that. That is falsifying ballot signatures. I don't know necessarily what's going to happen with Nico, but I think he's going to have a fun video in store for this topic. Alright, so the next 2 stories are somewhat related to the main topic to an extent. But one good and one bad. We'll start off with the bad, because why the hell not? Colorado Libertarians have decided to not submit the party's presidential ticket. So for those who don't know, the Libertarian Party nominated a person by the name of Chase Oliver. Chase Oliver was one of 2 primary people who was running for the Libertarian Party nomination. There were a lot of people who were running, but ultimately many people saw the race as a 2-way race between him and the Mises Caucus candidate, Mike Richtenwald. Oliver kind of represented the more classical liberal branch of the party, meanwhile Richtenwald represented the fascist wing of the party. And I mean this in the most genuine sense. Richtenwald supported Trump in the previous election, and he's well known for working with a pedophile. Not kidding, look it up. Mike Richtenwald used to work for a guy by the name of Allen Ginsberg, who is a member of NAMBLA. And if you were paying attention to the Libertarian Party convention, there was a really interesting thing that happened. When it was Richtenwald versus Oliver, when Richtenwald lost, since Oliver still didn't have a majority of delegates, there was a slight push at the end to have a no ballot option. There was none of the above. And if you also remember, there were also RFK was there, Trump was there, basically there was a lot of ifs, there was a lot of things that kind of wanted to make the Libertarian Party go in one way. But now, Chase Oliver managed to win the Libertarian Party nomination. And, as has been happening, turns out a lot of people have been very interesting in regards to Chase Oliver, with many libertarians just outright stating they will not back him come the general election. I at first thought it was just a bunch of Trumpsters who were running and be fuck Chase Oliver. But it turns out it's not just Trumpsters. Well, it is Trumpsters, but also quote-unquote libertarians, because a lot of people in the Libertarian Party have been expressing their dissatisfaction with Chase Oliver. One of which being one of the prime leaders of the Mises Caucus, Dave Smith, who's openly stated that he refuses to back Chase Oliver, and has stated, hey, I know that if I were in that seat, Chase Oliver wouldn't back me. And then Chase Oliver's like, no, I would back you 100%. And many state affiliates have kind of been like a lot of the harder right state affiliates have been trying to shift things. And of course, we all understand why that is, because for the past couple of years, the Libertarian Party has literally just become a fascist party. If you remember, in the post-Trump era, literally, it was like a fight. There were two sides of the Libertarian Party. One was the Gary Johnson, Nick Sarwark, classical liberal type libertarians. It's a classic battle that the Libertarian Party has always faced, where there's the radicals, and then there's the moderates. You get the classical liberal types, and then you have the full-on ANCAP types. And what ends up happening is that the ANCAP types basically will hitch their wagon to the most radical fringe person ever. And usually that means that they support literal pedophiles. I'm not kidding. That's just a common thing. I kind of find it interesting that I just did not mention that a lot in my Libertarian Party video initially. Because literally, it just so happens every time there's a battle between the moderate wing and the radical wing, it always happens to be for some reason about pedophilia for some reason. I'm not kidding. The first time this happened was in 2008 when the Libertarian, where the two frontrunners of the Libertarian Party nomination were Bob Barr and Mary Ruwart. And then Bob Barr basically brought up one interview that Mary Ruwart did that basically just asked a simple question. And it said, how would your administration tackle things I don't know if I can say these things, but how would they tackle certain types of pornography? And she said that under a free market system, people who consensually make that type of pornography, a type of pornography that the actors cannot consent to, she says that if you ban that, then it's just going to lead to it to grow. But if you make it legal, then it's going to be everywhere and no one will want it. Which is what? Huh? And then there was, of course, Arvin Vohra, who ended up running for the Libertarian Party nomination, who literally argued that gay men are just pedophiles, but not to make an anti-gay point. Well, the Mises Caucus basically took that branch, because the Mises Caucus is people who admire Ron Paul, and Ron Paul basically inspired the alt-right, so basically it just looped back around so the alt-right just went back into the Libertarian Party. And the Colorado Libertarians have been kind of being those very useful people, because the Colorado Libertarians made a pact with the Colorado Republicans saying if you and our candidates agree on these things, we won't run in certain districts. And now they've stated that they do not want Chase Oliver as the nominee in their state. And the reason being, these are the actual reasons why they do not want Chase Oliver on the ballot. This is their actual stated reasons. First was the fact that Chase Oliver wore masks. Literally, that's reason number one. Number two, that he followed social distancing during COVID. That's reason two. Reason three, Mike Termott, the VP nominee, made a joke about Donald Trump getting arrested. That's reason three. And reason four is the fact that Chase Oliver supports trans rights. Literally, as it says right here, the state's Libertarians also took issue with Oliver's stance, calling gender-affirming care a decision between parents and their child, contrary to the Colorado Party's contention that a network of public school officials, public health bureaucrats, and billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies creating a web of perverse incentives to pressure parents and children into irreversible decisions. So quite literally, because Chase Oliver takes the libertarian position on this issue, they do not support it. And there were a lot of people who were literally just flat out making shit up about Chase Oliver. And one of the things that they were making up was they were trying to pedo jacket fucking Chase Oliver. They were literally trying to claim that Chase Oliver was a pedophile. And need to remind you, the candidate the Mises Caucus backed is a Trump-supporting person who worked with someone under NAMBLA. The party of protecting kids. Fuck off, dude. Although, speaking of trans people, why don't we get on to some good news? Florida ban on medical treatment for trans kids struck down by judge. Florida's restrictions on medical care for transgender children are unconstitutional, a federal judge ruled on Tuesday as he struck down a signature priority of Governor Ron DeSantis. U.S. District Judge Robert Hinkle's decision invalidates much of a 2023 law and rules approved by the state boards prohibiting children from accessing medical treatments for gender dysphoria such as puberty blockers and hormones. Florida has adopted a statute and rules that ban gender-affirming care for minors even when it's medically appropriate. The ban is unconstitutional. Now, it does make some of the things I say in the main topic of this video a little bit, mixed, because I don't know how this will pan out, because a lot of the stuff I say on there does revolve around, Florida, at least mentioning Florida being part of a problem. It doesn't necessarily state Florida by name, but it's I bring up, things these certain states you can't do blah, 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 and then it's just what happens is Florida is one of those states. But anyways, with that out of the way, let's move on to the main topic of this video. And the first thing I need to say for the main topic is this. If you are transgender and you're in the audience, you are valid and deserve love and respect. Trans rights are human rights. 100% pro-trans rights. Because this is apparently a thing that people don't understand about me, apparently. Because a lot of new people jumped in and it's yeah, I am 100% in favor of trans rights. If that bothers you, click the unsub button or do something else. Because, quite literally, I don't care about you if you do not support trans rights. I would advise you to listen to this episode first. Maybe you'll understand why you're wrong and stupid. Transgender rights are a very hotly debated issue nowadays. It seems that we have many people who debate and discuss how far trans rights should go. Should we call you your preferred pronouns? How old do you have to be to transition? Should you be allowed to shit with people of your preferred gender? Or should you only be allowed to shit with people who were of your birth gender? Should you be allowed to play sports? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, blah, blah. We've heard all this shit already. And people have been very passionate about this issue. There are a lot of people who are very, very passionate about trans issues. And unfortunately, I don't think the people who are correct on this issue are the most passionate about this. It's always the far-right reactionaries who are the most passionate about this issue. If you do not support trans rights, there are a lot of things I could say to you, but why don't we just go over, literally every single reason why you're wrong? Because that's what a lot of this episode is going to be about, why you're just wrong. I think I might even change the title, because the title I was originally going to go with is Why Trans Rights Are Non-Negotiable, but I think I should just change the title to something a bit different. Maybe it'll still be that, because I do think that trans rights are 100% non-negotiable. But I think a lot of it literally just I think a lot of this episode really just goes over why a lot of the things that a lot of people seem to think about trans rights are just flat out wrong, and why you should support trans rights. First, let's go over this, because this is something that has been a new phenomenon. Let's just dispel this notion that there is somehow a scientific reason to oppose trans rights. We've seen this a lot since the anti-SJW era. In fact, we're going to go a little bit about it in the episode that's going to be released on Thursday. But yes, there are some people who legitimately do believe, who are claimed to be left or liberal, and they claim they love science, and then due to this, they oppose trans rights because somehow science disproves transgenderism, usually relying on a very, very, very basic understanding of biology. Quite literally, the most basic thing about biology. Quite literally just basic baby stuff. Literally, third grade textbook from 1995 basic. Not to give too much away, but quite literally, one of the people, quite literally, I'll just say it, Thursday episode kind of deals with that subject a little bit. Where one person, may or may not be on the thumbnail, says they claim that the episode has very little basis in science, even though they don't really cite any fucking scientific source. Because a lot of times people will just say, that's what they say. They say, oh, transgender thing, little basis in science, there's no basis in science about this. And then they don't actually cite any scientific reason. Literally, they just go, penis? Vagina? That's all you need to know. And very little understanding about, oh, you see, I was taught that sex and gender were the same thing. It's well, then you were taught wrong, because it's not the case. Sex and gender are not the same thing. They've never been the same thing. You just think they're the same thing because you were lied to. The reason why you say sex and gender are the same thing is because your grade school teacher didn't want to say the word sex to a bunch of children. That's the only reason why you think sex and gender are the same thing, because they are similar concepts, but one of them is also happens to be a naughty no-no word, but the other one is a safe PG word that you can use. One big problem is the fact that not only do a lot of these people just not understand anything, like they have this very basic understanding of science or whatever, but they also just don't want to learn. Like, that's one of the biggest problems with stupid people, honestly. It's not that you're stupid and wrong. You're free to be stupid and wrong, but the problem is you choose to remain stupid and wrong. Like, I didn't used to be incredibly based on trans issues. I had to learn about trans issues. I had to understand the issues presented to me. I had to research. I had to understand. I had to have first-hand experience. Well, not first-hand experience, like a second-hand experience. You know, this wonderful thing called, hey, there's a trans person over here. Maybe I should talk to them and learn about their experiences. Or listen to them instead of immediately shutting them down and pretending that they don't exist. And this maintains, like, in the scientific field, there are a lot of people who literally think, like, oh yeah, you see, I learned about this science thing these years ago, so I'm good now. And one of the biggest ones that we've been hearing now is Richard Dawkins, who, for some reason, even though his entire spiel, when he was, like being big part of, like, the, like, religion versus science debate, like, oh, you see, the reason why I love science is because science corrects itself. Science, blah, blah, blah. Like he says, like, all this stuff, like, yes, this is a good thing about science. Science and history and all this other stuff. They have a correcting process. The problem is, you, for some reason, don't want to participate in the correcting process. You want to be like, nope, this is it. We don't need to correct anything. Even though it's like, no shit, there needs to be correction, because clearly there's something that doesn't seem to be right. But even that, it's not even necessarily, it doesn't seem right, because we'll get to that in a bit. But it's just, I guess we'll just have to move on to some notes, because I'm going to be rambling. Okay, to get back on topic, like, one of the reasons, let me use this as an example. Because a lot of people, I use this as an example in the video on Thursday, but this is another example of why people sort of, like, not refuse to learn and accept anything. So, one big thing in the scientific community, and the quote-unquote scientific community, is the discussion about Pluto. As we all know, Pluto was declassified as a planet in 2006, reclassified as a dwarf planet. And yet, a poll in 2015 said that 55% of people still classify Pluto as a planet. Why? Because for some reason, people have a personal connection to the knowledge of Pluto being a planet, and they refuse to admit they're wrong. I mean, I looked into this a lot for the video that's gonna be released on Thursday, because a lot of it is just a lot more like, I put like a lot of stuff in like the text that I play on the screen. But like, first of all, a lot of people like also demand like, yeah, we need to reclassify Pluto as a planet, even though it's like, if we did that, you do know that the solar system would have over 700 planets then, right? Because the old, like, methodology of just finding a planet is literally just a celestial body in space. And there are a lot of things that are celestial bodies in space. So if we went by the old definition that Pluto had, then there will be more than 700 planets in the solar system. And another thing is that there are a lot of people who genuinely do believe, like, if they get information wrong, they literally feel like, oh, I feel wrong, I feel bad, I feel dumb. It's like, no, you can learn, and then you can be right on the subject, man. Come on. And that's the thing. I didn't get to be as base as I am now by not doing research and not doing anything. I learned, I accepted when I was wrong, and I moved past it. In fact, I think I could actually be kind of a summary of the entire progressive movement to an extent. Well, I guess every single movement can be identified as that, but like, I mean, like in the quote-unquote progressive movement, because there are a lot of progressives that are like, no, you see, we need to keep doing this thing. It's like, this thing clearly isn't working. You accept you're wrong and move on. And for this topic, a lot of people still have that mentality. There are a lot of people who literally look at the definitions of sex and gender that they grew up with, and they have some sort of weird connection to it, rather than wanting to be proven wrong on the subject. It's like, why not just accept you're wrong and move on? And the reason why I keep saying, why not just accept you're wrong and move on? Because, like, every single element of it just shows you're wrong. I've seen a lot of, like, talking points that they've used, and it's just, like, almost all of them are just objectively wrong. Like, I mean, I hear a lot of talking points about, like, trans issues or, like, whatever, gender-related issues or sex-related issues, and this is the first one that I really think is just fucking hilarious. there are a lot of people who like to make this argument that there are only two sexes, nothing in between. There's literally it's just boy, it's just penis, boy, girl, vagina, the end. Intersex people. Next topic, which you'll then usually get an immediate goalpost, because for some reason they'll get proven wrong and then they just immediately move the goalpost because they don't want to because they know they're wrong and they don't want to admit it. But but that's only like a really small percentage of the population. Does that really matter? It's like, yes, it does. You said there's only boys and girls. There's only male and female. But I've just proven you wrong. Intersex people exist. That's the thing. I have to explain this to people because, like, I've said this to people before, and they're like, no, the intersex people don't exist. Like, I've been told by people, like, no, intersex people don't exist. Like, no, they do. This isn't like a gender identity. This is like an actual biological explanation. This is quite literally genetics. 1.7% of the population is born with intersex characteristics. That's not nothing. Like, I mean, at first, it's just like, well, there's a small amount of the population. It's like, first of all, again, you were disproven. You said all the population is either male or female. And you just got proven wrong. There's something in between. But second of all, 1.7 of the Earth's population is roughly 130 million people. 137,942,963.337 to be exact. And who cares if it's only 1.7%? That's, again, not nothing. That's enough to be on the statistics. If it was like 0.00 something, it would be a little bit more understandable. But it's like, even then, it's still a decent amount of people. The next talking point that's wrong, puberty blockers. Puberty blockers cause irreversible damage to kids. They should be banned. Studies have shown time and time again that puberty blockers do not end puberty or cause permanent damage. It is essentially just moves the goalpost of puberty. Stop taking it, and then puberty happens. Like most medicines that you have to continually take, if you stop taking them, the effects are gone. If you stop taking a blood thinner, boom, your blood no longer thins. Stop taking antidepressants, boom, you continue to be depressed. Stop taking T blockers, and the T is no longer blocked. This is not difficult to understand if you know anything about anything. You see, we can't have trans girls play sports with cis girls because they'll have the advantage. Wait, hold on. I thought you said that the trans medicine will cause permanent defects to make them weaker and like whatever. Doesn't that make them like all the same level as women? Am I right? Huh? Doesn't it? Which is it? Does it like cause permanent damage to the males to make them not be able to go through male puberty? Or is it still not going to make a difference? Which is it? Here's one that is funny that I like looked into recently. That's just really fucking hilarious. It doesn't matter if you do any of the trans stuff because when you're dead, when they dig up your bones, they'll see who you really are. Like, it's basically just an extreme version of the we can always tell. And then it turns out they can't tell at all. Like, first of all, it's like, who the fuck is digging up their bones and be like, is this a woman? Is this a man? Let's find out. Like, who is doing that? Who the fuck is doing that? It's this obsession with like trans people's genitals. Like the same thing with like the people who like, we need to inspect everybody's genitals before they enter the bathroom. It's like, I think this is just you trying to get out of fetish or something. But let me tell you this story that shows how bullshit that is. You may have heard of this story, but you might be more familiar with how it looks. You've probably seen this image before. It's the Hasanlu lovers. Back in 800 BCE, the ancient city of Hansalu was destroyed by an unknown invader. During an archaeological dig of the site in 1973, they noticed two skeletons in a bin together that looked like they were kissing, and they assumed that they are lovers who embrace each other dying of asphyxiation from the burning city, and they were paraded around with that whole story, like, aw, this is so beautiful. These two people love each other so much. They kissed each other in their final moments of life. That's so happy. Ignore the fact that they brutally suffocated and died, but it's so happy. It's so beautiful. And for some reason, immediately, we went to look at the skeletons and pelvises, because that's the first thing that we went to do, apparently. And through thorough examination of the pelvises, we determined that it was a heterosexual couple. One of the pelvises was narrow, while the other one was not, which is what we apparently consider male and female pelvises. If I remember correctly, it was the one that was laying down that you can see the pelvis, that was considered male, but the one that was laying on its side was considered female. And it was like, oh, that's so beautiful. This loving heterosexual couple lovingly embraced each other as they died. But then, a scientific person decided to go, we're going to do a little something interesting. We're going to analyze the DNA of the skeletons. All right, here we go. Oops. Turns out they were not a heterosexual couple at all. Turns out they were fucking gay. We can always tell. And this was just fucking recent. Like, this was like 2022 when they discovered that they were both male. Quite literally, you spent years assuming that they're... Again, it's like proof that you can't always tell. And outside of like anecdotal evidence where people will really just be like, look at that fucking trans person. It's like I'll be with family and they'll be like, look at that fucking trans person. They're disgusting gross. It's like, no, that's just an old lady. What are you doing? What are you talking about? That is quite literally just an old woman. There are some people that just look quote unquote masculine and feminine. They exist. Speaking of, you can't use a singular they. It's not grammatically correct. Quite literally is grammatically correct. I've used singular theys my entire life. I've used them in basically every single video that I've made in my lifetime. And I've not had one person complain about it. But only when you want to refer to someone by they, them pronouns. So that's a bridge too far. There are some people who want to go so far as to literally just make an argument over the definition of fucking woman. Like, a guy on the record as saying that he loves to fuck 16-year-old girls because they're more fertile, protect the kids, made an entire fucking documentary on that very subject. Thankfully, we have the dictionary. They say that women are adult female human beings. Well, there you go. There's your answer. What is a woman? Adult female human beings. To which they'll again try to move the goalposts. It's like, that's actually a circular definition. It's like, you asked the question. This is the answer, you fucking idiots. Like, a lot of this really seems to boil down to modern day scientific racism. Like, I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like, this truly does feel like scientific racism. Like, for those who don't know what scientific racism is, it was when back in the day, people tried to use science to explain why segregation and all this other stuff was actually a good thing. Because they were like people who use science to truly believe, like that they believed, or just flat out lied to people and said like, oh yeah, you see the skulls of the African American, they show that blah blah, like yeah, and there's a lot of like modern day like obvious like white supremacist talking points where they try to use science to explain racism. A lot of those theories have since been debunked because they have no actual basis in science. And it's a lot of the same thing that I think a lot of this comes from. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of basis for all this stuff. They just say these things and they pretend it has a scientific basis. Now, there is one more element of disproving the so-called anti-trans science. And this one, I am so glad that I decided to look into this right before I released the episode, because this just truly solidifies the entire argument just completely in the trash, and is one of the major reasons why that poll that I released has that very specific like thing. If you don't know, I released a poll like last week that basically said like, hey, what are your stance on trans issues? And then one side was trans rights or human rights, and the other side is that you're pro-Nazi. And this is the reason why. because of the Institute of Sexual Science, a sexology institute formed in 1919 by Magnus Hirschfeld to study human sexuality. They were also known for studying LGBTI people, and the stuff that they did is quite literally no different from the medical understanding of trans people today, performing sexual reassignment surgery or otherwise allowing trans people to identify with their preferred gender, and saying that this will help them from committing suicide. I mean, I was quite honestly shocked when I looked into what the actual, stances of this place was. I heard that the Institute was very progressive for its time period, but I didn't know that it was literally just yes, quite literally, they came to the exact same medical, scientific conclusions about trans people that the scientific community says now. This was 93 fucking years ago when they said, yes, we think that persons who identify as the opposite gender should identify with that gender because it makes sense logistically and it prevents them from committing suicide. It's medically the right decision. And yet that's no different from the modern day, with only a few exceptions because we understand how this affects adolescents and blah blah. But it just floors me that this is a fact and it's buried away, which also makes the comparisons to Nazis way fucking easier, cause quite literally the same thing is happening again. This stuff was reported on 93 years ago. The Nazis didn't like it, so they decided to burn it down. And now, this stuff is being reported on again. You're saying, we don't like it, we want to get rid of it. So yeah, if you oppose trans rights, you're a fucking Nazi. Another way reactionaries get mad at trans people is to do the simple make things up argument, crafting very specific hypothetical scenarios that don't happen to argue against trans people. Here are two common arguments that I've heard that are, again, very blatantly untrue. Trans kids, or rather their leftist parents, are just getting sex change operations based on very little evidence. The typical one is hearing people say, your girl likes to play baseball, so leftist parents go to get their breast removed. Basically trying to pretend that, we're trying to get rid of tomboys, we're trying to get rid of lesbians or blah blah blah. We get that a lot. To the point where there's a fucking country singer who she was a woman, she's the son of a famous country singer, Jason Aldean. She's like, I'm glad that my daddy let me be a woman. It's like, fuck you, bitch, fuck you, back in the kitchen. You want rigid gender roles? Fine, back in the kitchen. You don't speak nothing. Barefoot make babies. To the point where there were some people who were literally spreading misinformation, claiming that toddlers can get gender-affirming care, well, literally under every single currently medically accepted guideline, it says the absolute youngest you can be to get any sort of sexual reassignment surgery is 15, and even then, rarely, again, literally the same scientific analysis that the Institute of Sexual Science did back in the day, where he didn't want to immediately recommend sex change operations, but then when he realized, the suicide rate goes down when we give them the surgery that they want, so let's give them the surgery that they want. Again, talk to any trans person or do any research into this subject, and you'll see that the process to get anything even remotely close to the part where they go snip, snip, that's going to take a long fucking while to get to, which is why a lot of trans people actually don't even bother with the snip, snip part. They just end it at the hormones and be done with it. Much more if you were even a minor. They have to go through multiple psych evals, and literally they recommend everything else before they even think of sex change operation, usually to the point where they're trying to kick the ball to when you're 18, or at any point further where it's you're an adult, you can literally do whatever you want. It's why we have things like puberty blockers to offer a less permanent solution for people who are still figuring things out, for the small amount of people who did transition. Speaking of, another element comes from that, where reactionaries will claim that there will be a lot of people who think they're trans, But then, when they grow up, they'll regret it in the future. But the damage on their body is so beyond repair that they will be sad and they'll regret it for the rest of their lives. And it's like, again, all of the quote-unquote damaging parts of transitioning happen when you're older, when you're a legal adult, and a lot of people remember, like, don't you guys think that legal adults should face repercussions for their own actions? Like, what? And according to all the research I've done, detransition rates are low as fuck. According to the gendergp.com thing, it stated that 97% of people who transition are fully happy with their decision to transition, and only around 3% can even be classified as detransitioners. And what's even more of a kicker is that of those people, only 5% said that they did it because they regretted a transition. The rest of them stated it was from outside factors, biggest one being pressure from parents and family, which was 62%. Others being harassment, which is 31%. And another one, financial troubles. Like, literally every single other reason was more of a common reason to, like, detransition than the actual wanting to transition away. Like, literally, it's the same reason, it's the same thing like when, like, people on the far right were also claiming, like, we need to be careful, the myocarditis in the COVID vaccine. When literally, when you did your research, it showed that of the 52 million first people who got the COVID shot of Pfizer, only 655 expressed myocarditis symptoms. And then when you actually did more research, you learned that it was actually significantly less that actually could verifiably be proven to have myocarditis, because the only way you can figure out if you have myocarditis is if you cut open your chest, rip it open, and look at the heart to see if there's scarring. And most people didn't want to do all that just for a potential hunch. The second reason is this one that's just fucking hilarious. That they claim that people are just pretending to be trans. Like, I've heard this before. Transgenders. There's some people who use that to define all trans people. There's some people who say that should identify only some people in the trans community. But they don't exist. I guess technically they might exist in some capacity, but it's like not a lot. Like, quite literally, there's people who legitimately believe, like, there's a big section of people that are like men that, oh, what he's gonna do is he's gonna put on a dress, he's gonna put on a skirt, he's gonna grow his hair long, and then he's gonna run in a track meet so that he can beat the girls in the track meet. What? What? Why? Why would he do that? Like, quite literally, what purpose would that serve? Like, this makes no sense, because just like, if he was lying, he'd get caught, and then he would get all his awards taken away, and then he'd be a fraud forever. Under what circumstances does this make any fucking sense? Like, quite literally, they literally think, like, oh, this guy, he's just, like, South Park made a fucking episode about it, where they literally just went, like, there's this person, big, muscular, masculine man, he just identifies as a woman, and it's like, oh, he's just gonna do all this, like, trans, like, track meet, he's gonna, like, ruin the women's categories. Like, first of all, you don't even give a fuck about women's sports anyways. Second of all, this doesn't happen, so, again, not an issue. But what bothers me even more than just that is the fact that there are some people who want to go one step further and even claim that there are going to be a ton of guys that are just going to put on a skirt and they're going to be like, now I'm going to go into the women's bathroom. And, you know, they're going to heavily imply that the person is going to rape people while they're wearing, like, a skirt. And it's just like, well, first of all, again, the data does not show that to be the case. The data shows that trans teens are more likely to be sexually assaulted or harassed otherwise when they are forced in the bathrooms that they do not identify with, as opposed to the ones committing the assault. A story literally just happened recently where a trans girl was beaten up in a bathroom, and then a bunch of, like, reactionary conservatives like, hey, that'll show them for going in the wrong bathroom. And it's like, they went in the bathroom you wanted them to go to. They wanted to go to the girls' bathroom. You forced them to go to the boys' bathroom. And the boys beat the shit out of them. And again, you're just openly cheering the fact that a minor got the shit kicked out of them? What? You're like 40, calm down. Like, just the fact that you really think that there are going to be guys out there, like, just explicit guys that are just going to wear dresses and skirts, not for, like, any, like, pleasure on their part, but just so they can, like, do other things. Like, men are, like, the fucking, like, most chauvinistic people in the planet. They get, like, shit. They get, like, you don't understand what it's like to be a man then. You just genuinely do not understand what it's like to be a man. A man is not going to dress in a skirt and, like, do all this stuff for... It's, like, a similar reason to, like, when people are like, oh, you see, we need to, like, do this thing to make sure that criminals don't do bad things. So we're going to make murdering have it so that your right to vote gets taken away. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that they don't give a shit. I'm pretty sure if they're going to literally just suffocate a person and murder them, they're not going to be like, I was going to do that, but I would lose my right to vote. Ah, rats. No, you're doing it for an explicitly different reason. But in the same way, you're not doing any of this like stuff to actually protect women. You're doing this because you want to control trans people. I don't know if this is explicit like in the same viewpoint, but it's like there's also like the argument of like quote unquote trans grooming, that they are secretly trying to transify your kids. When that's also not how it works. Like quite literally, that's not how it works. Like, I mean, that ties into the point of, like, you know, the whole nature versus nurture argument in regards to, like, LGBTQ issues. Because it's just, like, I mean, there is something there when you need to understand. Because, like, you can't force someone who is one thing to be something else. And I know this for a fact because of this story. The story of David Reamer, which shows another level of things that makes me just absolutely infuriating about people who don't support trans rights. David Reamer was born, quote-unquote, biologically male, with a condition called phimosis, where the foreskin will not allow the penis to emerge. So, Reamer was taken to a doctor to be circumcised, because it was one of the few cases where circumcision was the correct decision. Quite literally. It was like, literally, if they didn't do it, they would have been, like, deformed for the rest of their life. So, and the doctors decided, rather than doing the typical form of circumcision, they were going to do they were going to do electrocauterization, which would burn the foreskin off. So they did that, but what they ended up doing was burning David's penis beyond repair. I guess circumcision gets another L. I was gonna make a joke about how people are like, oh, you're so anti-trans rights and so like anti-minors like making the decision to be trans, and yet you're also pro like circumcision. But I know for a fact that there are a lot of people who are extremely far right that literally are also just opposed to circumcision. So his parents took him to a doctor named John Money, who decided, I know what we should do. We're gonna cut David's penis off and then force him to be a woman for his entire life. Now, before anybody says anything, no. John Money is not in favor of trans rights. John Money is a very notably anti-trans person. It seems very odd when this is the case, but this seems to be a very common thing. I literally learned about a story or two about like, a person who is born one way, born biologically, like usually biologically male, and then due to a freak accident, will be forcibly turned into a female by the doctor. And there's like, they're not pro-trans. They just don't, it just makes no sense. Why are you not pro-trans at this point if you're just going to allow this to happen? And basically this doctor decided to do a lot of experiments to try and make sure that David, like, was instilled in David's head, like, you are a girl. You are a girl. And even to the point where they forced David and his brother to engage in play sex in order to hammer an idea that David is a woman and must be subservient to men during sex. However, during all of David's life, David knew something wasn't right. David didn't say anything at first, but as the life was going on, David was just like, something's wrong about this. Yes, there was a lot of things wrong with this story, but And eventually, like, someone kept, like, they would keep asking David the question, are you a girl or are you a boy? And then one day David answered, honestly, they felt like a boy. No matter all this stuff that happened, no matter the fact that everybody was telling them, no, David, you're a girl. No matter all the times they used this name, no matter how many times they referred them as female, she, her, no matter how many times in their lifetime that they were, like, forced to do these horrible things, they thought they were a boy. No matter all of this sociological and, like, no matter all of this pressure from the outside world, they felt like they were a boy. Not only does this show that you can't groom your child to be trans because you can't force them to be something they're not. You cannot force them to be who they are not. There are a lot of trans parents who try to think that oh no, this is what we can do. Because there was this picture of this fucking conservative woman. It's like, look, my child thought that they were trans, and I took away all their trans-related stuff. And look at them now, 1 year later. And it's like, that child is absolutely miserable. You could look at the picture and just see that child wanted to fucking kill themselves. And that child probably will. Like, logistically, if they don't get out of that fucking household now, they're probably on death row right now. You can't force your kid or anybody else to be LGBTQ. You can't force them to be something they're not. On something like that identification. That doesn't work. And this story infuriates me for a lot of reasons. And one of the biggest ones is this fact. I can't speak from firsthand experience, but from what I've read and what I've heard, that sounds just like the trans experience. You're told all your life, no, you're this, you're he, him, or you're she, her. You can't be a boy, you can't be a girl. Blah blah blah. Like, you can't. Like, and it's like forced in your head. Like, oh no, you're this way. You're this way. You are this. But in your mind, you know, no, something's not right. Something's not right. I'm supposed to wear this, but this doesn't feel right. But then I walk past the store of the opposite, like, sex clothes, and it looks amazing. I want to wear that. Like that is what you're making trans people go through every fucking day. Why? That ties in the next, like, point, but first I want to just address this really quickly. Like, there are a lot of people who also want to just make out the claim, like, oh yeah, you see, all these ways to help trans people, they're actually not the right way. You know, like, oh, they can't transition, because transitioning actually doesn't help them. Their suicide rate doesn't go down when they transition. It's like, well, yes, it fucking does. Every single study says that, but you're fucking stupid. But let's get rid of the fucking science. Like this is just who gives a fuck about the science? Why don't we talk about it on a moral level? Lots of Christians and other religions like to talk about having this sort of, like, moral high ground for opposing trans rights. All while, of course, you know, defending the actual fucking predators through their churches or the politicians they support. Like, again, like, the most moral, religious people in the United States are literally defending a person who is friends with a child sex trafficker who appears in his flight logs of the places that he sexually trafficked children. And there are prominent Twitter accounts that literally point out the fact that literally every single day there's a person in a Sunday school or in a church that gets arrested for sexually harassing a teenager or a child. And how many transgender people or drag queens are on that part? Because they like to make this claim that opposing trans people is morally right. Why? Why is opposing trans people morally right? Quite literally, why? Because, like, what is morally wrong about a person being happy about themselves? What is morally wrong about a person doing something that doesn't affect you in the fucking slightest? Quite literally. Like, trans people, like, a lot of people like to literally fucking pretend like, oh, the trans people and gay people, they want to do this, want to do. It's like, they just want to be fucking accepted and not be killed when they walk out on the streets. And not be called things like faggot or whatever. Like, that's quite literally all they fucking want. Quite literally. That's all they want. Why is that too much for you? Because your fucking book says, oh, well, we can't do that now, can we? It's like, why? Why? First of all, I just want to address this funny thing I just found out. According to the Gospel of Thomas, it says here, Simon Peter said to them, Mary should leave us, for females are not worthy of life. Jesus said, Look, I am going to guide her in order to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you males, for every female who makes herself male will enter in the kingdom of heaven. So, quite literally, you trying to use Jesus, God, or whatever the fuck to make your argument about, oh, you see, actually, trans people shouldn't be... Jesus literally says every female who makes herself male will be entering the kingdom of heaven. Jesus is a trans ally, you fucking morons. But to reiterate a point that I made in a previous episode, so fucking what? So what? Who cares what your fucking religious text has to say about a person that shouldn't live the life they want? Why should I give a fuck? It doesn't affect you. No one innocent is getting hurt. What is the problem? The Bible says, no. What is the problem? The Bible says, what is the problem? And yeah, you're gonna claim the fucking moral high ground when literally, again, some of those more religious people in this country are literally backing child sexual predator for president. And libs of TikTok, literally, it's like, yeah, supporting trans people it's morally wrong. But meanwhile, literally every time there's a gay or trans person who is a teacher, libs of TikTok will literally just post their entire fucking address, post the school they work at, and then literally just be like, you know what to do, boys. And then magically, that school will have like 15 different bomb threats. Like quite literally, for literally the most basic shit. Like literally, the teacher will just be like, hi, I think everybody deserves love and our respect. And then Libs will be like, this is their address. This is their home. This is where their kids go to school. You know what to do, boys. And then, again, magically, every school in that area, for some reason, has 15 different bomb threats. And then one guy actually shows up with an AR-15 at the school. Protect the kids. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the fact that I literally pwned Libs of TikTok by literally pointing out the fact that she posted a video on her Twitter account of a guy breaking into an occupied middle school bathroom. Literally some dude with a camera walks in to the middle school bathroom to be like, why do the boys' bathroom have tampons? It's like, why is the fucking middle-aged man walking into the middle school bathroom with a camera? That's what I'd be more concerned about. If that guy came up to me and was just like, look, I went to your kid's middle school, and I went in there, look at this video. It's like, wait, hold on, what the fuck? Why are you walking into the fucking middle school bathroom with a camera? What? And these are the same people that are like, oh yeah, by the way, the middle school bathrooms, they need to have gender, we need to verify the people that go into there. We need to inspect them before they head in. It's like, these guys are the fucking obvious pedo-coded guys. Why are these guys obvious? These guys, don't look at their porn stashes, dude. You're gonna see tons of stuff that you don't want to see. Again, genuinely, what moral ground do you have? Don't cite a fucking religious text. Cite actual real life. This person can't be happy because of what? What specifically is the problem? Quite literally, all the arguments about trans people are literally nothing fucking new. These arguments have been used time and time again to oppose literally every single form of social progress. Literally, every single one of these, a focus on women. Like how modern day people are like, oh yeah, trans people, literally everything. Trans women are ruining women because men are trying to infiltrate women's spaces. Or oh, you see, they're forcing lesbian or trans, they're forcing lesbian and tomboys to transition to boys. They're trying to use women. Women are the ones we need to protect. Much the same way, people used to claim that black men were raping women in droves, which is why the Klan needed to come in to save them. That's literally the same argument that was made back then. A focus on protecting the children. Literally, gay panic was all about alleging that they were grooming kids, alleging that somebody is brainwashing them to believe these things. The USSR was apparently fundraising Martin Luther King Jr. Vietnam was brainwashing college campuses. Russia's funding pro-Palestinian protesting. Every single form of social progress has been met with the same various fucking criticisms that are all completely baseless and nonsense. Nazis claimed that the Jews were grooming kids into being Bolshevik gay people, And quite literally, a lot of reactionaries today view the same thing as happening. By admitting that you are anti-trans, you are admitting that you would have fallen for every single reactionary fascist bullshit argument that has been in the past. You would have been with the Nazis rallying to burn the books. You would have been with the Klan rallying against Martin Luther King. You would have been pro sending our boys to die in Vietnam. You would have been cheering for John Brown to be hanged. You would have been cheering for gays to die in the AIDS pandemic. You would have been cheering for the police officers to sick the dogs on John Lewis. You want to know where you stand on an issue of the past? Quite literally, just look at what you stand on the issues of today. Which is why it perplexes me that we have people who are not only left of center, but also we have people who are in the fucking LGBTQ movement that are trying to shit on trans people. Quite literally. Like, not just thing, like, literally every single minority group. I don't understand why every single minority group isn't universally automatically pro the next minority group struggle. Like, I mean, a lot of black people are, like, anti-gay issues. And it's just like, well, fuck you then. Like, I mean, genuinely, just, if you're not pro-LGBTQ, then you are wrong. You can't be going like, we should have been marching for the civil rights movement, and then automatically go like, oh, no, not this civil rights movement. No, not this one. This one's bad. No. Like, I understand why a hetero white man would be in favor of, like, shitting on trans people because they're the people in power, and they want to, like, shit on the people who are not in power because they get their sick little kicks off of it. But I don't understand why literally anybody else would be against it. Especially, again, people in the LGBT movement. It's like, you learn nothing of your people's struggles. Like, LGBT people were literally the most recent struggle to be faced. And now that they apparently got their rights, when it's like, okay, trans people are like, okay, now it's our turn to get our rights. There's just like, a lot of people who are in the LGBT movement are like, nah, we're not gonna do that, nah. It's like, well, I know that a lot of these movements are just fucking AstroTurf campaigns, but it's just like, it just bothers me because, like, gays against groomers, it's like, guys, you were called the groomers not that long ago. There's also another one that's like, that is like, I forget what they're fucking called, but they're called something. They're like, we need to remove the TQ. There was no TQ. There's just one fucking account that I don't remember the name of it, but it's just so fucking weird. It's like they literally say there's no such thing as gay culture. It's like, are you fucking serious? And then you look at their follower accounts and think, oh, they're following like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. accounts. Oh, they're just AstroTurf campaign. Okay. Like, literally, in the 2000s, we had Fox News and all these other right-wing pundits that were going, the media is making our kids gay. And now it's, the media is making our kids trans. It's like, these arguments are literally not that old. Remember, evangelical groups were literally complaining that SpongeBob was pushing the gay agenda. Gay men are looked at with disgust and not trusted in a lot of teacher and daycare roles because people are afraid of quote-unquote grooming that might happen under it. Even though it's way more common for straight people to do the grooming and not them, and it's way more common for it to happen to about a family member, but, you know, people don't want to do it. People don't want to look into that. There was quite literally a popular propaganda film called Boys Beware that was literally about the quote-unquote dangers of homosexuals. Like, I mean, there's literally a fucking Adam Tots comment that literally explains how this is just stupid understanding. Literally, it's like a comic, you may have seen it, where it's like a MAGA guy and then a gay guy, and they're like, yeah, we got rid of all the drag queens and trans people, and then the gay guy's like, no problem, guy. And it's like, alright, so now we're off to kill the next group. Alright, who's next? And then it's just like multiple panels of like the MAGA guy just staring at it. It's like, who's next? Who's next? And it's like, the joke is obviously supposed to be that when they're done with the trans people, you're fucking next. Are you fucking stupid? But then there's like this guy who's literally just like, I fixed the comic for you. And then the fixed comic, is literally just an edited thing that shows that, like, they don't understand anything. They literally think that they're special. Like, you see, we have a newfound respect for you gay people for standing up for what's right. It's like, dude, they don't care. They don't care. Dave Rubin's literally been sucking the right wing's cock for like the entire time. And every time he posts like something like, I'm having a happy day with my husband, they're literally just like, hey, kill yourself, kill yourself. Like, literally, every day. Literally, Blair White will be like, look, guys, I shit on trans people for the 15th time in a day. And they're like, go in the boys' bathroom, you loser. You're not special. You're just selling yourselves out. Literally. You're just prostitutes. Two big ones that I'm seeing with the specifically targeting the LGBTQ community or the LGB community is that one is like, if you don't want to fuck, like people are claiming, like, oh, you see, they're going to say that if you don't want to fuck trans people, they'll cancel you. Quite literally, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody cares. A straight guy is more likely to get canceled over being like not liking a trans person, but usually because they're gonna make a big fucking deal about it. We had that whole fucking super straight thing. Actually, we're so straight that we're not gonna fuck trans people. It's like, you didn't really. You're just doing this because you fucking like you're a transphobe. I mean, sexuality is fluid. We understand this. We understand this. Like, you literally, nobody gives a shit about your preferences. The same thing, like a lot of like people who are like reactionaries try to point, like they try to say this thing like, if you don't fuck a black woman, that means you're canceled. It's like, no, nobody cares. Literally, if you're a gay man, you're just like, I don't want to fuck this trans person because they don't have a penis. It's like, okay, who cares? I didn't expect you to. Even to the point where there's some people who even try to claim that who's they? I don't know. But they are trying to erase homosexuals. It's the singular they that they don't want you to say in public. It's the singular they that they don't want you to say. But like they make the claim that they're pressuring like a lot of the big ones that has been used is like, I learned this from Glenn Greenwald because he's trying to like make the claim they're trying to erase lesbians. They're trying to make lesbians not exist anymore. And in fact, they're not. That's not a thing. Because again, go to the data and you'll see that almost every single study, and when I say almost every single study, I mean there really isn't that much studying that's done in this field. But of the study that exists, it shows that there are more male to female transgenders than there are female to males. So this whole aspect of like, oh, you see, they're making the lesbians disappear doesn't make any sense because there aren't that many female to male transgenders to begin with. Wouldn't it show like, oh, lesbians are down and trans men are up? And it goes against every single literal, like, anecdotal and historical understanding of like trans rights, where a lot of times where a lot of people are trying to go so far as to make the claim like, oh, you see, now they are trying to force you to become trans instead of actually being gay. When in actuality, no, it's usually a lot more the opposite, where you're trans, but then they say, are you sure you're not just gay, man? And, while, yes, transition is not for everybody, a gay man who likes pink isn't automatically a woman. I think I should ask one question, though. Are we sure there aren't a lot more people who should have transitioned? Because, I guess I'll just get into it. It's EPU's Crackpot Theory of the Week, and this one's a doozy. I don't have a lot of basis on it, but I think this is a thing. Like, a lot of people have tried to make the claim, trans people are going up. The numbers are going up. When a lot of people point out the fact that, realistically, this is a similar thing to left-handedness. It's not that being trans is bigger and, like, more of a thing. It's just that now we're not forcing trans people into the closet into not identifying the way they do. Well, my crackpot theory of the week is something very, 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 very big. And this one can kind of destroy everything. Because I noticed this. Notice how there's a lot of gay stereotypes? Like we all know that. There's a lot of gay stereotypes out there. Gay men have a very, like, stereotype of, like, being very, very effeminate. Like, hello, it's me! And then, like, they're, like, really, like, showy. They love show tunes. They love all the women stuff. There's even the stereotype of, like, that a lot of gay men love wearing drag. And for lesbians, there's a lot of, like, stereotypes about, like, oh, see, there's a lot of, like, lesbians that, like really butch. They, like, really borderline, they're, like a borderline, they're a man. Like, literally, to the point where there's, like, a joke every time there's, like, a butch lesbian in, like, a TV show. There's usually a joke about, like, oh, someone thinks they're a man. It's like, you thought I was a man, didn't you? And it's like, oh, yeah, I did. Well, I started thinking about, like, specifically the stereotypes for gay men. And something really caught my eye. Because, again, I noticed a lot of the stereotypes revolved around, like, like them acting very feminine, them seeming feminine, blah, blah, blah. But I also noticed how a lot of gay men don't really act like that at all. Like, quite literally, they don't act like that at all. To the point where there are a lot of gay actors that you wouldn't know that they're gay unless they explicitly told you. Because quite literally, they don't exhibit the stereotypical gay, like, whatevers. They don't do the gay wrist, they don't have the high-pitched voice, they don't do all, like, the extremely feminine stuff. And then I thought about the familiar adage about stereotypes. All stereotypes have to come from somewhere. But somebody had to do them at one point. Like, realistically, that's not necessarily true. I know that a lot of stereotypes don't really necessarily have that much of a historical basis, but bear with me. If that viewpoint of stereotypes is true, that somebody had to do this, like someone had to act this way to sort of develop the stereotype to begin with, then what if, hypothetically, what if a lot of these stereotypes were caused by trans eggs, transgender people who had not come out and realized they're trans? Especially the drag queens back in the day. Like, what if literally a lot of them were just trans people who didn't understand this? And we see this nowadays. Like, there's a lot of people who are femboys who, like, will always act like, oh, no, you see, I'm a boy, but I'll wear this skirt. It's like, and then, like, 5 years, and then, like, a year, like 3 years later, they're like, oh, identify as a trans woman. It's like, what if those people just lived in a world where they didn't believe that transgender people were accepted? Which is probably a fact. But if they were put in the modern day, I think that a lot of them might probably identify as just trans. Now, I know this is a touchy subject because I know that there are a lot of people who really kind of get, like, iffy about this thing. Like, I mean, Kurt Cobain has had a lot of speculation about their sexual identity, and a lot of people are kind of, like, iffy when you bring up the fact that they might have been trans. But hopefully, all that stuff probably just shows, like, quite literally why I believe that trans rights are non-negotiable. Quite literally just, I think that last part, like the last part before my crackpot theory, kind of explains it best. By stating you oppose trans rights, you're stating you oppose every single social movement of progress. You would have opposed the right for marriage equality, you would have opposed women's rights, you would have opposed desegregation, you would have supported the lynching of black people. Basically, every step in social progress, you would have been the bad guys. You would have literally been on the side of the Nazis. Quite literally, again, you would have been on the side of the Nazis because they argue the exact same positions that you're stating right now. You sold that to fascists. And don't even come to me about pretending, oh, you see, actuality, I'm left-wing on these issues, but not on these socialists. Like, if you're admitting that if you do not support these rights, you're not on the left, you're a fascist. Quite literally. Roseanne Barr, allegedly a radical socialist who just really wasn't all in on trans rights and insulted Jill Stein about it. Now she's just a Trump-supporting fascist. Jackson Hinkle and Caleb Maupin literally identified as communists, but then they focused on being anti-woke. Like, oh, you see, these trans issues aren't really that important. Now they're literally just Trump-supporting fascists. Pedro Castillo was just not prioritizing gay and trans rights because his country is very socially conservative. He ended his term with fascist friends and members of his cabinet who were fascists. George Galloway and Sarah Wagenknecht ran on, oh, you see, the left-wing party in our country, they're running on social issues. We're going to run on anti-social issues and pro-working class issues. Now they're literally just fascists. If you're even bringing up problems with, like, gay and trans people, you're dictating it's important to you and that you care about this issue more than other issues. As I said before, trans rights are human rights, and that's not negotiable. If you do not support trans rights, you are not on the right side of history. You will one day be looked upon with the exact same, like, vitriol that people will hate you for, the same amount of vitriol against you as the Nazis. Because, again, you and them were advocating for the same side of this issue. Like, there are a lot of people who were, subbed to me recently, apparently, and they're like, this Paul is very rich. It's like, you're on the same side as Nazis. A fact. That's a fact. It's not my fault that you're offended by it. Triggered snowflakes. Facts don't care about your feelings, bitch. And the facts are pro-trans. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to notify when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to, basically, I really don't know how to end the card of this anymore because I don't use Twitter and the website is pretty much dead, so I don't know what else to say. Consider supporting me on Patreon.